segment on the show. So, Benjamin Burgis, doctorate of logic, logic doctor, Ben Burgis, the number one doctor of logic, a doctorate in logic and philosophy, but especially logic, was, now this is, no, all seriously though, this is something I've been following. He went on the Joe Rogan show like a week ago. He said some problematic things. Now, I want to be very clear. I'm trying to be very charitable here. Ben Burgis said a lot of good things on the Joe Rogan show. But, in my estimation, the bad outweighs the good. Because he went on there and fell into some very clearly laid out traps. That being those very weird, painfully horrible conspiracy theories that Joe Rogan promotes about transgender people. Ben Burgis didn't really push back much at all on that, which is unfortunately, and he pushed back a little, but then he was like, oh, you know more than me. Yeah, if Joe Rogan knows more than you about trans stuff, you should probably educate yourself. I'm just saying. But another thing that Ben Burgis did was he was trash talking Antifa and promoting that the conspiracy theory that Antifa just runs throughout the streets and beats people up for fun or whatever. Promoting the conspiracy theory, and I will use this term, and I'm fine to debate using this term at another time, the conspiracy theory that Andy Ngo is a journalist. That's what Ben Burgis was at the core of his promotion. Andy Ngo is not a journalist. He is a right-wing agent provocateur that goes around, doxes people, right, and sends kill lists to neo-Nazi organizations such as Atomwaffen, okay? He is not a journalist. He is not a writer. He is not an editor. He is not a media guy. He is a right-wing agent. He is a neo-Nazi team player. To suggest otherwise is a conspiracy theory, and I'm fine to go into more detail on that. I went into that detail in some of my previous videos. But anyway, so as you can see on screen, this is exactly what I was warning Ben about. And it doesn't seem like Ben really listened to me at all. But if you click here, you'll see Andy Ngo tweeted, Joe Rogan and author Ben Burgis discussed the violent thuggery of Antifa, which includes assaults, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to play a little bit of this clip. Again, I already replied to the subject of this in another video, so just go watch that. But I want to, play a little bit of this.
That's insane behavior, that this is... this serves no good purpose, whatsoever, that a lot of the things that people said about it at the time when they were trying to justify it were, turned out to be bullshit, which is also true. Also, and also, by the way, I don't want to set the precedent that we're going to have street violence where people who somebody decides they don't count as a real journalist and that they're
So again, Andy Ngo has been linked to neo-Nazi organizations. This is well documented, and I went into this in my other video response. But anyway, and Ben Burgis should educate himself on this. If he's going to write books about Andy Ngo, if he's going to write books about Antifa, he should educate himself on this. Right? So obviously, Andy Ngo reads this and promotes Ben Burgis, and this leads to a giant disaster. So I tweeted about this. I got 100 likes on my post. But also, I tweeted about this a couple of days ago, and I mentioned he went on another podcast to defend these talking points, and I went into this in a segment as well. And exactly what I predicted here, is seemingly what's going on. But Ben Burgis didn't acknowledge my critique. Well, he did because he followed me on Twitter. So he did acknowledge my critique in the form of following me on Twitter and not saying anything else. But anyway, so he responded to this, and I want to look for this post. He wrote a thread about this criticism that I want to read. All right, so I'm going to read what now again, my criticism of him, he just followed me and didn't say anything. Now again, I don't know, am I supposed to say hello? I don't know, that's weird. I'm not good at this. I'm autistic. But anyway, but other people started yelling at him, and then he felt the pressure enough to respond. So this is what he says, and let's get to it. thread. What I said about Andy Ngo in my book on JRE last week and elsewhere at the time is, I don't like him. He strikes me as dishonest hack. But assaulting was obviously indefensible in principle, as well as a perfect example of what Chomsky warned us in 2017. Right-wingers have been killing people for decades. They've been hunting people down for decades. Again, I have been the victim of right-wing violence. I've had these neo-Nazi groups that Andy Ngo is attached to send police raids to my house. I've dealt with Andy Ngo, like, trying to dox me and when doing protest footage in journalism last year. I'm very, very familiar with how these things work. Now, again, Ben Burgis and Noam Chomsky. Again, am I saying Noam Chomsky's canceled? No, but he's wrong on this. Just how Ben Burgis is wrong. You can't just point to, oh, but look, Chomsky said this, so Chomsky can also be wrong. Just how Ben Burgis is. Ben Burgis and Noam Chomsky are people that do not go outside to demonstrations. They're not frequently targeted. Also, let's be honest, they're both cisgender white men. Let's just be real here. Like, we are in 2022. Right-wing groups have been targeting trans and gay people extensively, and black people as well, extensively, significantly more than people like Noam Chomsky or Ben Burgis. I'm just saying. And again, like, yes, Noam Chomsky has been, he's had to deal with a lot of shit, but I'm just saying in regards to this. And also, this is an outdated take from 2017. I mean, I think it's pretty clear if you look at what's been happening since 2017, Antifa are not escalating anything. Let's be honest. Let's be real. It makes sense for right-wing trolls to pretend not to understand the mind-numbingly obvious distinction between my saying Andy Ngo sucks, but attacking him was both morally wrong and tactical and strategic own goal. Now, I just want to say the language here, like, he's trying to, like, treat the real world like a math problem. And that's, like, the big problem is logic. In a scenario like this, like, this isn't a math problem. There's no, like, right answer. There's no, like, correct way to solve the equation. And he's trying to treat it like that. Let's just be honest. What's a lot harder to understand is why anyone on the left thinks they're getting out of conflating these two positions, but I do hope that the stupidity of those from various quarters gets people, especially if they aren't leftists yet, to check out the episode as a whole where, now again, so he basically says, yeah, right-wing trolls will be right-wing trolls, that's obvious, but also, look at all the cool stuff I did on Joe Rogan. And that's great. I'm glad he did cool stuff. So he, listed all of his cool stuff. Whatever good faith disagreements some leftists might have with me on the corporate censorship, comedy, or Antifa, I've had a hard time understanding what set of priorities could lead anyone, at least on the socialist left, to try to say that my getting to say all those things on the platform, plus the bonus of getting to plug Adolf Reed to millions of people, is a net negative. Like, really? Now, again, I want to, I responded to this. Let me find my tweet here, and then I'll go off on that a little bit. So this is what I said in response to this. I want to go off. I want to expand on this. Things land differently. People will phase out and not listen to an entire show with complete attention. And as a result, only the most shocking kinds of sensational things make the rounds. Talking up good leftist things is good, but you can also just not punch left while doing it. Now, again, if Ben Burgis would have just repped the left entirely and was just like, saying a bunch of really pro-left stuff, that's great. That's great. But again, especially in a 3-hour show with an mostly, let's be honest, apolitical audience, they're not going to know what Jacobin is. They're not going to look up Adolf Reed. I'm sorry. They're just not. I guarantee you, like, whatever audience you're aiming for and you're trying to get them to, like, buy Adolf Reed's book or something, if that happens, it might be 1 or 2 people at best. I'm just saying. I'm just being honest. Right? Most of the people, like, if they don't know anything about what you're talking about, they're just going to phase it out. They're just like, now again, it's good to expose them to these ideas in the abstract way, and it primes them to be more susceptible to them in the future, and that's good. But again, you can do all of that without trashing anti-fascists, without calling anti-fascists middle-class LARPers, which is really stupid because most anti-fascists are homeless and in poverty. So, like, there's approximately, like, 0.0001% of people that will engage in anti-fascist action and be, quote, middle-class LARPers. It's just an obscene right-wing conspiracy theory. And again, it's not just about, like, if people, like, ran up to a random guy who said something that was right-wing on Reddit and no one saw it, but they're right-wing or something, and they're a writer, but, like, no one cares about them, yeah, I would say punching them probably not a great idea. But someone who is literally trying to dox people, harass people, send their names and info to neo-Nazi groups to get them killed, again, that is an act of violence. Sending people's private information to neo-Nazi groups with the intent of having them be stalked, harassed, and killed is an act of violence, and self-defense is okay. Now, again, Ben Burgis does not go to protests. He is not informed on this. He is not educated on protests. He also referred to Black Lives Matter demonstrations in 2020 as using Molotovs and mortars on police. He referred to Black Lives Matter protesters as using mortars, military-grade missile equipment, is what he claimed Black Lives Matter protesters had. I wish. I mean, that would be cool. But, again, it's fine to disagree with that. But again, this guy, Ben Burgis, has a history of just punching down on protests, punching down on left movements. And that's my problem. While downplaying right-wing movements like January 6th, he continues to say that, like, there was no possibility of anything worse happening. He continues to say that it's not indicative of right-wing violence on the ground. And he's doing this with Andy Ngo. And that's my problem. I would love to educate Ben Burgis on this. He seems like a relatively smart guy on a lot of subjects. So I would love if he would just speak to people that actually go to these demonstrations, that actually get involved in real world. Now, if Ben Burgis' opinion is that no one should protest at all, and all protesting is irrelevant, and the only things that matter are electoral organizing or unions, okay, then you should be honest about that and say he's against all protests. But I don't know if he would be willing to go that far, but he basically, that's his net attack. Or that's his net tactic. Is he downplays right-wing protests and then exacerbates the problems with left-wing protesters and movements. And it's weird. It's just weird. It's weird. And again, I called him out on this a week ago. I told him that this was going to be, it was a matter of time before it made the rounds. I warned him. Right? He could have, if Ben Burgis wanted to come on my show and we would have had this debate like a week ago or whenever. Like, I'm just saying, I know he sees my shit, right? Like, because I posted my invitation and he just followed me. Like, I don't know, that's weird. I don't know, but I'm autistic, so maybe I'm reading too much into it. But, but anyway, like, again, he could have put this whole controversy behind him already. Now, again, it might have still been a problem, but he could have just pointed to, like, oh, I did a show where we talked about it, and, I was wrong on a couple things, and here's what But instead, he's doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down, and it seems that he's not willing to really listen to the critique. Like, he keeps going, like, again, look at all the other things I did. I talked about postal banking. I talked about Jacobin. Oh, I said Medicare for all is cool. Like, that's all great. I love that. But we're not talking about that. No one is talking about your postal banking. He's distracting from the fact that he's getting well-reasoned, logical criticism against his position on Andy Ngo and anti-fascism and transgender stuff. He was wrong on that stuff. And so I came out of this wanting to push him to the left. I want him to be educated. Like, me saying, hey, you fucked up when you said something really stupid about trans stuff. Hey, you fucked up when you said this. Here's actually what, you got your facts wrong. I don't, yes, postal banking is cool. We're not talking about postal banking. We're talking about your opinion on Andy Ngo. We're talking about your opinion on street violence, fascism, and the fight against it. We're talking about how you kind of just, let Joe Rogan run all over you with trans conspiracy theories. Again, Andy Ngo inspired a mass shooter that shot 5 people in Portland. So again, it's great that you talked about postal banking, but guess what? I'm not talking about postal banking. I agree with you on postal banking. What are we going to talk about? This isn't about canceling you because you went on Joe Rogan. Some people might say that. I'm not that person. So, and again, I'm in a position where, like, you know, I comment on left-wing media online, right? That's something I do. I was a fan of Ben Burgis' work at some point in time. I would say I personally am under the impression he's lost the plot in past tense. Like, he's not losing the plot, but he has lost the plot, in my opinion. Now, I think 2020 did break a lot of people. I think a lot of people that were... I think 2020 had a lot of events that took place that broke a lot of people. The George Floyd uprising, like, again, that's where Ben Burgis really... That's the root of his cringe store. In this, like, kind of right-wing pivot that I've been noticing. Is he was, like, very critical of, like, the Black Lives Matter uprising of 2020. Again, he said that black people were running around with mortars or something. He said that on, like, a David Feldman show where David Feldman was, like, brutally owning him. He was saying that, like, yeah, Black Lives Matter people were firing mortars, military missile equipment. Like, it's just like, what the fuck? Like, again, that's just, like, you didn't even look into that at all. Like, you're just parroting something that, like, fucking, like American Patriot 1776_2 posted on Twitter. You know what I mean? So I think 2020 did break a lot of people. The pandemic, the uprising, right? Left-wing activism becoming way more popular. The election. And now we've got this situation with Russia and Ukraine. I think a lot of people have chosen the wrong path. And one of the things is a lot of people, I think Ben also suffers from this, is that people do not like to admit when they're wrong. Especially public people. Especially public intellectuals. And I know Ben Burgis considers himself an intellectual. He's like, you know, I'm a Christopher Hitchens fan. I have been since I was a kid. He wrote a book about the motherfucker. He's obviously emulating Christopher Hitchens in some capacity. But I think he misfired, and I think he's emulating Sam Harris. I think he's going through like an IDW turn here. That's what I think. But anyway, you know, I criticize people in left media, and if I know the person, if I'm familiar with them in some capacity, like I am with Ben Burgis, I was a fan of his show for a while. Or I guess before he even had a show. You know, because when he would, you know, I first heard him when he would do the regular segments on Majority Report and TMBS. So, and I appreciated his presence then during the primary. But 2020 broke a lot of people's brains, and a lot of people are afraid to just like backtrack. They're afraid to be like, oh shit, I may have made a series of miscalculations. Let me go back to square one on a couple things. Let me go back and read some other perspectives on some stuff. Let me talk to some people that have a different perspective here. But it seems like he's just ignoring, like, valid left criticism. I don't know, man. It's just sad. It's just sad. And, you know, open invitation to Ben. He follows me. I don't know. Like, should I just send him a message? I don't know what to do with that. Like, I criticize him. He doesn't say anything to me. He just follows me. It's just weird. I don't know what to say. It's just weird. I'm not socially equipped for that. But it's very strange. Very strange indeed. So. He's going to go full IDW and call himself a rational Marxist. I'm going to be honest. And let me talk about this too. I don't see Ben Burgis doing that, at least for a while. Ben Burgis is still, like, he is on a right-wing trajectory, in my opinion. He's on a right-wing trajectory, in my opinion. He's gonna need to be canceled by, like, someone, you know, like he's gonna need to get pushed back on, like, more shows before he does that. Because the thing is, like, no one is treating him. But I personally think I'm treating his weird right-wing pivot with kid gloves. I personally would say that I'm being more than respectful at this point, maybe compared to what I said previously. But like, he hasn't had too many combative shows. It's just like, to him, he can zone out Twitter criticism like that. That's all it is to him. He needs to, like, go on, like, the Majority Report and have, like, someone push back on his weird trans stuff and like the Andy No stuff. He needs to get pushed back on like a show that has people that he respects on it. And he needs to like, because right now he's just like compartmentalizing this as like irrational lefties like piling on me. That's just, it's a coping mechanism. But also, I mean, David Feldman ripped him apart on January 6th. David Feldman destroyed him on January 6th. On the subject of January 6th, I should say. And then he kind of like backtracked a little bit, but then retracked later on. It's just, I don't know, man. It could just be a lost cause. But anyway, I'm going to comment on it because that's what I do. And also I'm high, so it's a lot more fun when you're high.